it is 10:30. My name is Sarah Moldavsky, and I would like to welcome you to the Missouri Historical Society's Summer Family Fun Series. Thank you so much for being here. We are excited for you to join us virtually today, and we invite you to come back every Monday at 10:30. Our series runs through the end of July. So I need to quickly mention a few details about how today's program will run. This will be a roughly 45-minute workshop. Today, we are going to ask you some questions, and you can talk with us and ask us questions too. You can answer questions and talk with us through the chat. We will do our best to read everything that you have to say, but we might not always have the chance to respond. And just so you know, everything you type is private. It will only be seen by our presenters. Today's presentation is being recorded. So if you would like to view it again or share it with your friends, it will be posted on our Missouri Historical Society YouTube channel early next week. Your feedback is always important to us. We would really appreciate if you could answer a few questions for us after the program. A Kobo Toolbox survey will soon open in another tab in your browser, so keep an eye out for that when you leave this session. I know that some of you watching are Missouri Historical Society members. Thank you. We are grateful for your support, and if you are not a member, we would love for you to consider joining today. You can see the link to our website in the chat box. I'll link that here in a moment. We also sincerely thank city and county residents for your tax contributions through the Zoo Museum Tax District. Thank you. And we're going to get started. So today, we are doing a special version, a walk in the park. This is a special version of our summer program that we are taking virtually. This is something we would normally be doing in person, but that's okay. We can do it just as well virtually. It's going to be all about the World's Fair and all sorts of kind of things about it. So today we are going to be learning about the 1904 World's Fair. We're going to use our imagination and movement to think about what it would have been like to be there. We're going to learn about a couple selected buildings and get a couple takeaway challenges to do at home. Now, I'm not alone today. I am joined here with several of our educators, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then I'm going to pass the ball to Andy, who's going to take it from here.
Well, hello, folks. My name's Andy. I will be one of your educators today. And joining me as well today are my friends Emily and Zecora and also Alyssa. So you'll get to hear from all of us today. We're going to start off this morning by looking a little bit at what the 1904 World's Fair actually was. And then after that, we will move into some activities. So if we could, let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, what is the 1904 World's Fair? Some of you may have heard of this before and learned a little bit about it, but it may be a kind of a new idea for some of you. So let's see. Think about if you've ever heard of a place called Six Flags before, or perhaps if you've ever heard of a place called Disney World before. Okay, well, actually the World's Fair was a little bit like those places. It had rides that you could ride. It had food that you could eat, shows that you could see. One of the neatest things about it, though, was that people came from all over the world to St. Louis. So it did happen here in St. Louis in Forest Park. It celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the Louisiana Purchase, and that was an event that brought Missouri into the United States. Before that, it was part of France. So it was pretty cool that that happened. We're glad that we're part of the United States today. It lasted for about 8 months, and people came from all over the world, from places very, very far away, places like China, places like Europe. Truly, the entire world was here. There were so many different types of attractions that you could see as well. There were palaces for every nation and for every state where they could show off what was cool or what was unique about their culture. There was also the Pike. The Pike was kind of like a street where they had games that you could play and lots of fun restaurants to eat at. We also had the Olympics here, just like they have the Olympics today in modern times. These are the same Olympics that they had back then. And this is actually the first time that they had had the Olympics outside of the United States. Okay. So we're going to look at some pictures of the World's Fair and think about what it would have been like to be there. Now, we're going to go through several pictures here. We're going to spend maybe about 20 seconds looking at each picture. And then at the end, I will ask all of our participants to type some of their ideas into the chat box. And we'll give you some time to do that. But we'll do that at the end. First, we're going to look at a series of pictures, and we'll take about 20 seconds to look at each picture. So why don't we look at the first one now? All right. So here's picture number one. Let's take a close look at this one. And like I said, we're kind of putting ourselves into the image, right? Maybe choose a character in the image and pretend that's you. Transport yourself back in time to the World's Fair. Think about the stuff that you're seeing. Okay, here's another one. We've got a big Ferris wheel here and some other buildings around it. You can tell how big it is based on kind of like how small some of the other buildings are next to it. But imagine if you were there. What would you think? Maybe you're on the Ferris wheel. What's that like? All right, here we have a bridge and some boats. What would it be like to be here? Maybe you're on the bridge looking out. Maybe you're on a boat taking a ride. What would that be like? All right, here we have another view of this wonderful lagoon, this kind of lake here. We've got a big fancy building in the background. We've got a nice boat. I see one participant saying they're sorry that they were a little bit late. Hey, that's okay. We don't mind if you're late. We hope that people continue to sign on, and we're happy to have everybody. All right, here's another image of nighttime at the World's Fair. Okay, now that we've seen all those images, I want you all to kind of think back on what we just looked at and take some time to type an answer into the chat on what do you think it would have been like to be at the World's Fair? You can take your time for this. It doesn't have to be a long answer. It could be just 1 or 2 words about like a feeling that you were having. And we'll spend a good minute here so that everybody has some time to type stuff out, because we know that sometimes it can take a little while to find the words that you want on the keyboard. What do you think it would have been like to be at the World's Fair? I see one of our friends says it would have been nice. It would have been happy. Okay. Some of the stuff in those images just made you think nice or happy. Someone said like visiting a foreign country. Okay. Amazing. Lots of fun, I see. Okay. So I'm seeing lots of people feeling very positively here. Interesting to see all of the sights. Yeah. So it sounds like there was lots of stuff to see. It made us feel kind of happy. Maybe some of those bright lights and some of those fancy buildings and the Ferris wheel seemed amazing, kind of fun. One of our other friends says it looks busy. Okay, yeah, maybe there's lots of people there, lots of stuff going on. It's busy. Maybe some of us get a little maybe uncomfortable if things are too busy. I've certainly felt that way before. One of our friends is asking about this picture. Are those wheelchairs? Yes, they are. In the picture that's on your screen right now, you can see some people sitting in wheelchairs. And those could have been for people who had trouble walking, but also they were mainly for people who really just were tired and didn't feel like walking. So they would pay someone to push them around. Okay, I think we're about out of time, but thank you so much for all your wonderful responses there, folks. That was a really good warm-up activity. I love how all of you used your looking skills and your imagination skills to put yourself into those pictures and think about what it would have been like to be there. I'm going to hand things off now to my friend Emily, who's going to lead us in a very fun movement activity. Oh, I'm sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. Emily, stay on deck because you're coming up next. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about this map that you should see on your screen right now. This is a map of Forest Park from 1904. So this is a map of the World's Fair. On it, you can see lots of different buildings. Anything that's in pink, those are some of the big, big palaces for different states and for countries, and for things like engineering or agriculture, which means farming, things like that. So this is what it looked like in 1904. Now, if we go to the next slide, now we can see a little bit of what's there in Forest Park today. So you can still see on the bottom some of the things that were there back in 1904, but on the top, these kind of 3D buildings, these are things that are there today. So you can see like the Art Museum. You can also see the Missouri History Museum. It's in the bottom left there. You should see a red circle around it now. We do programs like this in person at the museum, although today this is a virtual program. But if we did this in person, we would actually do a walking tour around Forest Park, and we would start there from the Missouri History Museum. And we would walk around and kind of imagine we were back in time, just like we're kind of doing today virtually. Okay, now it's time for my friend Emily to jump in. Sorry I got ahead of myself there before, but Emily, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. So just like Andy was saying, if we were actually able to be together, we would be walking around Forest Park. However, since we are not able to do that program together, we're going to still do some walking. So I want everybody to stand up wherever you are and clear a little bit of space around you, because we're going to do some walking in place and use our imaginations as we think about what it would have been like to be at the World's Fair. So go ahead and stand up and move. I'm going to move my chair over so that I can move around a little bit. And I want you to start walking. So you can march in place like this. If you want to jog, you can. If you want to do a silly walk, you can do whatever you want. We can't see you, but just start moving your body. And we're going to start imagining what it was like to be walking through Forest Park and walking around the World's Fair. So let's go ahead and see the first slide. Okay, so again, we'd be leaving the Missouri History Museum, going this way through Forest Park. And this image that you're about to see is what Forest Park looks like right now. So if we go ahead and go to the next slide, and we're pretending like we're walking, this is what you would be seeing right now walking from the Missouri History Museum through Forest Park. But again, we're using our imagination to pretend like we're back in 1904. We're back at the World's Fair. So going on the map, we're going to be walking through, using our imagination, what was called the Model City. And as we're walking through and looking at these pictures, I want you to be talking with your family or with your grown-ups or whoever you're watching this presentation with about what it is that you're seeing. What are you noticing? What are you thinking about? Okay, so let's look at some pictures and take a walk through the World's Fair. So this is a bird's eye view of what was called the Model City. The Model City was basically just a street where there were lots of different buildings that you might find in a city, schools, government buildings, playgrounds, things like that. And it gave people ideas about things they could take back to their own cities. This is what it looked like from above. Next picture. All right, this is another view of the Model City with some of the different buildings that you could have seen. Again, I want you to be talking out loud. What is it you're noticing? What is it that you're seeing? We're walking through the Model City. This was the town hall. This would be like the mayor's office of the Model City, the government building of the Model City. So what are you noticing about this Model City? What are you noticing about this building as we walk through? Keep marching. All right, as we're walking past, you'll see this statue out in front of the town hall. So take a second and just say out loud, what are some things you notice about that statue? Oh, it's a lot of walking through the World's Fair. So at the Model City, different cities around the country would actually have their buildings on display. So like New York City or Kansas City, this is the San Francisco building, where they could actually kind of show off some of their different ways of representing themselves. So as you walked around the Model City, you actually saw buildings that represented other cities around the country. This was a playground at the Model City, and this was a place where parents could drop off their children, and the children could play on the playground while the parents went and explored the fair. They actually got a little ticket so that they knew which child belonged to which parent, almost like a coat check, which is kind of interesting. This is what a playground looked like in 1904 at the Model City. We're still walking, keep marching. All right, this is the Palace of Liberal Arts. Palace of Liberal Arts was just a building where lots of different people could display their inventions or their ideas. And a lot of times these were things that didn't necessarily fit into another one of the palaces. So again, what are you noticing about the outside of this building? What do you think about it? Talk about that with your family. And then in the next picture, we're going to see a little bit of what it looked like inside. This is inside the Palace of Liberal Arts. This is a typewriter display. People really liked writing letters, and the typewriter was kind of a new piece of technology. So people could go and actually check it out. What are you noticing? What do you see? And then another thing that would have been shown at the Palace of Liberal Arts was something called a weather balloon. This was kind of a new invention. So this gentleman is showing off for some of the people that were gathered some things that that is one of his new inventions that he could show. All right, we have taken a lot of walking. So let's take a second. Let's sit down if you want to. I'm gonna grab my chair. And I want you to have a conversation with your adult, with your grown-up. What were some of the things that you said or you thought about on our walk through the World's Fair? Have that conversation for a couple of moments, and then either you or your adult, if that's faster, can type those answers into the chat. But we want to hear, what is it you noticed as we were walking through the fair? I noticed one of my friends earlier as we were looking at some of the pictures said that it looked cool, that they liked the map. I think that was in connection to the map. Yeah. So what are you thinking about from what we saw through the model city? From what we saw? One of our friends is asking, there were lots of statues. What were they made of? They were made mostly out of something called staff, which is kind of like plaster, a softer material. They had to build the fair very quickly, and they wanted it to look really, really nice. So they made a lot of the decorations in the buildings out of wood and plaster so that they could do it very quickly. One of our friends says playgrounds look way different than now. Yeah, they really do. They really do look very different than now. I know we're missing the playgrounds in this current time period, but we've really changed the way playgrounds look. That's a really good skill called comparing. So I like the comparing that you did there, that they look very different. Yeah. If you have any other thoughts to share, we'd love to hear them. Yeah, one of our other participants says that the buildings were so big and fancy. Yeah, they were really, really fancy. And St. Louis was really trying to show off to the world and show that they could make some really great buildings. And someone else said the weather balloon was very cool. Yeah, there were lots of really great inventions to see. Thank you so much for all of your great thoughts. Someone else said they noticed a lot of flags on the buildings. Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. People were there to display themselves. So yeah, there were lots of really cool things to see, from the decorations to the buildings and all of those things. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts there. So again, we are going to take a look back at this map of where we would be in Forest Park. So that was through the model city, and now we are arriving at our first location, which is called the Palace of Manufacturers. If you want to go to the next slide, this is what Forest Park looks like today, where the palace would have been. But we're going to take a closer look at the Palace of Manufacturers in that building, and I'm going to hand it over to Alyssa to tell you a little bit more about the Palace of Manufacturers. Take it away.
Hi guys, Alyssa here, and here we are at the Palace of Manufacturers. And we're going to show you a picture of that. There it is. Okay, so the Palace of Manufacturers was like a shopping mall, or maybe like a gigantic gift shop, so you can get things to remind you of the fair after it was all over, and see new things and from different places, made from different places. And also there were parts of it that was like a bazaar. So a bazaar is like a farmer's market, or maybe like an outdoor market. And there are also some really large displays put on by bigger companies. And we're gonna take a look at the building before we go in. So here's the Palace of Manufacturers during the daytime. And you can see that bridge again, and people floating on by in their boats. And then here we have it at the nighttime. So it's beautifully lit. It's a beautiful building. Okay, now we're inside, and over here you see we have a display with things made from China. So we have, looks like a lot of furniture, guys. I see a lot of chairs, and looks like some vases and maybe some pottery. And we actually have some of these things from this actual display in our gallery, the World's Fair Gallery at the museum. So the next time you're able to come in and see us at the museum, make sure you check that out. And we have the display from Italy. So with the Italy display, you see a lot of little statues. They're like little structures here and little sculptures. And I imagine a lot of people probably wanted to take these things and put them in their yard, maybe, or maybe somewhere inside their home. And that would be very unique, right? Show off to your neighbors that you have a little statue that actually came from Italy. How neat is that?
Alyssa, I just wanted to jump in for a second. One of our friends in the chat says, "This is fun." And we're glad you're having fun. We're having fun too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony. Okay, we can look at another display, another booth. Okay, so this is one of the large booths that we were talking about, put on by larger companies. So this company is the Jacob J. Vollraff MFC company, and they made housewares. So kind of like a crate and barrel. They made like a lot of things for your kitchen, like a lot of ceramic mugs and kettles. You see they have a giant kettle they made for this display. And he liked the giant teapot, me too. And so this display actually won an award. This company came in from Wisconsin to St. Louis to put this up. And the company is still around now, just by Vollraff. Somebody realized that name was much too long. We can move on. And here we have a picture of more of the bazaar type booths that were set up. And you remember we said the bazaar was kind of like a farmer's market or an outdoor market where you can just walk right up and pick things up and look around, or you can buy it or not. You can say, no, thank you, I'm just looking. And we can move on. Okay, so what would you be interested in seeing or doing? And we'll give you a minute to type your answers into the chat. Thinking about all those displays we looked at, what would you like to see? What would be your stop in the shopping center? You guys have another maybe 45 seconds or so. Share with us. What would you be interested in? Okay. Okay, and so we have some panelists saying that you know, they're be interested in seeing things from other countries, buying things from other countries. Someone said these things look expensive. I agree, they do look expensive. It'll be interesting to know about how much these things would have cost. Someone said buy a souvenir. Okay. All right.
Alyssa, I'm sorry to jump in here too, but I really like that someone pointed out the giant teapot is also one of my favorite photos.
Yes.
And I also saw someone said that they want to do this forever, which is such a great thing to say. Thank you. We're so glad you're enjoying yourselves.
Absolutely. That's so cool. Yeah, I love the giant teapot too. Okay. And so we'll just give you guys just another few seconds here to comment. Like, was there any particular stand you wanted to see, like the one from China or Italy maybe, or maybe the bazaar? Maybe that's more of your thing. You like kind of sifting through items and picking them up and checking them out.
I think we're actually out of time here, Alyssa. So we're going to have to wrap it up there and move on to the next segment.
Great. Okay, so time to shop, guys. And we can move on. All right, so we're going to give you a closer look at some of the items that you actually could have bought at the World's Fair. And we're going to start with shoes. You could buy shoes at the World's Fair, specifically from the Brown Shoe Company, which is a company that is still around today here in St. Louis. And this company, we have a picture here of their booth at the World's Fair. And they actually made 300 pairs of shoes all day for sale to the public. So you could buy that at the World's Fair. Let's see what else. Okay, you could buy stationery. So this booth also sold candy, but they also sold envelopes and letters that, writing paper for writing letters with like little pictures of the World's Fair on there. And it might actually say St. Louis World's Fair 1904. So you can send that to people, and you can send postcards with pictures of the World's Fair on it. And you can also buy housekeeping items. So the reason why this would be interesting, guys, it might not sound so interesting, but the housekeeping items were considered innovative at that time, and these were like new technologies. So you could go from having to beat the dust off of your rug with the broom to having a vacuum cleaner to just suck it up right off the rug. So this might be something you would be interested in, bringing something home that no one's ever seen before, no one's ever used it before. Or you could go to the Simmons hardware booth we see here, and they made their booth out of their own hardware, including a windmill made from their hardware tools. So that must have been pretty interesting to see. Okay, so what would you like to buy? Remember, we have hardware, we have inventions made for housekeeping, shoes, or like stationery, souvenir stationery with pictures on them. So what would you like to buy?
I'm going to launch a poll here, and you can actually tell us what you would like to buy. You've got about 10 more seconds to vote.
Okay, so the results are in, and it looks like most of you would like a new invention to help you with that work around the house. I totally understand. And then secondly, a lot of people would like a souvenir, so maybe some of that stationery or the postcards to send off to people, tell people where you've been. And then a few people would have liked the shoes or some type of clothing or accessory. And no one wanted the hardware. So Home Depot at the World's Fair was not as popular. I get it. Okay, and so let's talk about what made you buy that item. Now, this time you can type your answers into the chat, and we'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, and we have someone said they love the items. Let's see. Okay, and someone said something new, they would like something new to make life easier. Technology is great, new and improved, absolutely. So I'm getting a lot of answers to people who wanted new technology because it's new. They wanted something to make their lives a little easier at home. And
one of our friends says they just love shopping, which sure, I think we can all relate to that. Someone else said they love tchotchkes, those fun little goofy souvenirs you can get.
Yeah, okay. And so that's something that's a little smaller, but you can definitely remember the event with the souvenir. Okay. And so we're going to go ahead and move on from that, guys. All right, and we're going to move on to a takeaway challenge we have for you all. And so this challenge is to make your own product and booth that you would sell at the World's Fair. So think about if you were going to set up a booth at the World's Fair, what would you be selling there? And maybe why? What will make that thing interesting, that item interesting? And don't forget to tag us at hashtag MHSLearn and hashtag Clubhouse at Your House. And we have a couple examples for you guys of things that, you know, you can make to sell at the World's Fair. So someone made stay away spray. And so it's for, you know, people who are maybe concerned about their social distancing at the World's Fair. We saw how crowded those pictures look, right? A lot of people crammed into one space. So this could maybe kill some of those germs. You can be more comfortable. And we have a couple of fans. These are handmade fans, and a lot of people, it was probably very hot, right, at the World's Fair, being crowded into those buildings. So that would probably be a popular seller at the World's Fair. And then we have Wyatt's wonderful World's Fair souvenirs. And so it looks like Wyatt made his ornaments, or like little ornaments out of different types of dough and clay, and maybe even a little bit of silly putty. And these are actually modeled after some of the real pieces of plaster that was made for the buildings from the World's Fair that you can see in our gallery, the World's Fair Gallery, at the museum next time you guys come to see us. And they look very, very similar to those pieces. It's like a lion's head. Awesome. All right, take it, Emily.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. All right, it's time to move again. We're going to keep moving on from the Palace of Manufacturers. We're going to go see what else we can see. So stand up, make sure you have plenty of space around you. This is the map of where we're going to be going in Forest Park. So again, we're going to take a quick look at what would be on that site right now. So go ahead and start your walk again. Again, you can walk this way, you can run in place, you can do a silly walk, whatever you want to do. This is what Forest Park would look like right now if we were walking through the park. This is what we would be seeing. But again, we're imagining we're back in 1904. So let's see what it is that we're going to be looking at in the World's Fair. This is called the Sunken Garden. It was between the Palace of Liberal Arts on one side and the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy on the other. We're going to talk about that Palace of Mines in just a second. This is another view of the Sunken Gardens. You can kind of see a similar view, but maybe from a different perspective. Again, I want you to be thinking about, what are you noticing? What are you seeing? What do you think about it? This is the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy. This is the palace that was dedicated to mining, things that came from the earth, and things you could make out of metals. This is what it looked like on the inside. Keep walking. Missouri had an entire display of things that were pulled from the earth here in Missouri and things that were made from those minerals and those elements. Okay, this is another view of that. What are you noticing about this picture? What are you noticing about the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy? Going outside of the palace now, this was an area called the Gulch. This was where people who visited the fair could see different things that they used in mining, different mining equipment. They could see it, they could experience it for themselves. And my very favorite part is this next slide. This is really cool. This was a working coal mine that they had on the site of the fair that you could actually ride in a coal cart, almost like an amusement park ride, which I think would be really fun to do. So this was some really cool things from the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy that people could experience. Whew, let's go ahead and take a stop right there. Grab your chair if you need to, and then have a quick chat with your family members. Sorry, I almost fell in my chair. What were some of the things you said on our walk? What were some of the things you thought about what you saw? Have that conversation and then type your thoughts into the chat so that we could hear them, please. We really want to know, what is it you noticed or experienced? Okay, go ahead and put those answers in the chat now so that we can hear what it is that you are talking about with your families. That was a quick walk too. If you need to grab a drink of water, go for it. Some of the things that you noticed, what you thought about, what was maybe interesting to you.
They want to ride in the coal cart.
Yeah, riding in the coal cart I think would be really fun. If you think about going to like Andy pointed out that the World's Fair was kind of like Six Flags or Disney World. There were rides that people could go on. I'm seeing lots of participants now saying, I would want to ride on that. I would want to go on that. Me too. Someone else pointed out the cannon, if you noticed in the inside the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy, there was a big, big cannon, which I think might be a little scary, but also would be interesting to be able to see. We still have some of these artifacts, not necessarily these artifacts, but similar artifacts on display both at the museum and down at Soldiers Memorial, which is downtown, which you can always go visit if you want to. If you have anything else you want to add, go ahead and drop that in the chat real quick. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move on from our exploration of the Palace of Mines. So again, if we were in Forest Park, this is where we would be now. We're not far from the Grand Basin, but we are actually going to stop here for our next stop. This is called Picnic Island. This might look a little familiar. And then we are going to learn a little bit more about what was on this site back in 1904. And my friend Zecora is going to take that away. Real quick, I do see someone in the chat said we saw lots of people walking around. Exactly, just like we were pretending to do. All right, Zecora, tell us about the Missouri Building.
All right, friends. So remember, we're using our imagination to think about what it would have been like if we were there during the World's Fair. So we're going to be talking about the Missouri Building right now. The Missouri Building was part of all the state buildings that existed during the World's Fair. There were also different cultural groups that had a lot of buildings, but the Missouri Building was the largest. It had a refrigeration system in the basement that kept the building cool. It also had ornately decorated parlor rooms, which are like really, really fancy living rooms. If you've ever been to maybe a grandparent's house and they have a very fancy decorated living room that you can't sit in, they really would have looked like that. They also had a Japanese room and a 1,000-seat auditorium, which was pretty big back then. It was supposed to be permanent, but it ended up burning down right before the fair ended. So today, the World's Fair Pavilion is actually in the location of where the Missouri Building was. So if you look right here, that is the World's Fair Pavilion, and that is where the Missouri Building would have been during the World's Fair. And we could see it from where we are on our walk. While we aren't right at the Missouri Building, we can see where it would have been and the reminder that we still have left. It's right there where you see the arrow pointing to the World's Fair Pavilion on today's map of Forest Park. So lots of different places had buildings or stands or displays, like I said, but we're going to show you a few pictures of different displays that were at the World's Fair. And you guys can guess who the display belongs to in a poll. So we can go to the first image. So take a second to look at this, and then the poll is going to pop up. You can tell me what state or country you think made this display. All right. 15 more seconds to vote. And a lot of you guys said Missouri, the Missouri Building. We also have some people who thought maybe it was Brazil. We can go to the next slide. And this was the Missouri Corn Palace at the Palace of Agriculture. You can see the Missouri right above the arches here. You can go to the next one. All right. If anyone was paying attention, maybe we've seen this before. Let's take a second. Maybe think about where this could have came from, and the poll should pop up soon. All right, what state or country do we think made this one? Got about 10 more seconds to vote. All right. Oh, and I think I closed out the poll. There they go. And a lot of you guys said Italy. We have some people who believe it's Mexico. And maybe one person thinks maybe it's Maine. Let's go to the next slide. This is the statue of Vulcan from the Roman god of metals. Remember we talked about the Palace of Mines and Metallurgy? So this came from the Alabama exhibit. All right. And where do we think this one came from? All right. And I see a lot of us thought that it was Texas. We can go to the next slide. This is from the Texas exhibit of grains and grasses in the Palace of Agriculture. All right, so where do we think this one is from? Maybe I was thinking about the setting. Where could this be? You have about 10 more seconds to place your votes. All right, a lot of us thought that this is from Japan. I would say that you guys are correct. We can go to the next slide. This is the Japanese tea house and garden that was at the World's Fair. This one's interesting. It's more of an art piece. Where do we think this could be from? What do we notice about this? Guys have about 10 more seconds to vote. A lot of us believe it was India. We have maybe California, maybe from China. Let's see. Where's this image from? This is the elephant made of almonds in the California exhibit at the Palace of Horticulture. So what we're gonna do is we wanna give you guys a bit of a takeaway challenge. I want you to think about how would you represent yourself or your family or your community at the World's Fair and make your own display. This display can be a building, it could be maybe an art piece, anything really. And then maybe if you're feeling a little ambitious, I could challenge you all to use recycled materials to create your takeaway. And then tag us at MHS Learn or Clubhouse at your house. We have a couple of examples. Here we have someone made African American flag from popsicle sticks and maybe drawing. We have someone who wrote out what their display would look like. They said that it would have hearts to show that they love their family, maybe a German flag to show their heritage, and the symbol of St. Louis because they love their city so much. Here we have Sarah's Friends and Family, which is made out of a recycled cereal box that shows what their display would look like. It has maybe a section about their pet pig, maybe an About Us section, and something that they're selling there in the back. I see this is a building plan, except it was made in Microsoft Paint, so it doesn't have to be super fancy. This building looks like maybe you enter through the arch, and then you walk in and there's history, but there's also food, and it shows people of St. Louis. So it could really be anything. We just want to learn about you guys. And Sarah's gonna come back. We want to thank you guys.
Thank you all so much for coming today. We were so happy to have you all here. Thank you so much for all of our educators for sharing with us this morning. That was so much fun, and I hope everyone watching today had fun too. Thank you for tuning in. We are very curious. Did you learn anything new? Let us know in the chat box, and also tell us, what was your favorite thing today? We would love for you to join the Missouri Historical Society for more summer family fun. The series is happening every morning, Monday morning at 10:30. Next Monday on, I believe it is July 13th, we are having a music-based one for younger students, so check that out. Also, we are going to be having storytelling sessions every Friday at 10:30. You can visit www.mohistory.org or Facebook to check out more upcoming virtual programming. And remember, we would love to have you tell us what you think about the programs today. A Kobo Toolbox survey should have opened in another browser tab. Please take a minute to complete this if you can. Awesome. I got some people in the chat. Someone said, yes, a lot of fun. And someone said they liked all the buildings. So I'm so glad that you all enjoyed all that. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and see you next time. Goodbye.